In August 1966, a remote hill near Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, became the scene of one of the most enigmatic and unexplained crimes of the 20th century. At the summit of Vintem Hill, the bodies of Manoel Pereira da Cruz and Miguel José Viana were discovered. Their mysterious deaths captured the imagination of people worldwide, sparking a wave of speculation and countless theories. What exactly happened on that hot afternoon when two friends, both electrical technicians, were found dead, their faces covered with peculiar lead masks and strange instructions left in a notebook? The story begins in a time when today's thriving Niterói was still an underdeveloped town, struggling with the rapid industrialization of Brazil. Manoel and Miguel, both electrical technicians and colleagues at the same company, came from the city of Campos dos Goitacazes. On August 17, 1966, they told their families they were traveling to Rio de Janeiro to buy spare parts for their repair shop and purchase a car, something they had been planning for some time. Everything seemed normal. However, what was meant to be a routine trip soon turned into an impenetrable mystery. The two men boarded a bus that would take them roughly 280 kilometers closer to their destination, hoping, if all went well, to return with their own car, or at least, that's what they told their wives. On August 20th, 1966, 3 days after Miguel and Manoel had set out to purchase the needed spare parts, everything changed, and the mystery began. A boy named Jorge da Costa Alves was searching for a good spot on Vintem Hill to fly his kite. Suddenly, his attention was drawn to a foul stench wafting from the direction he was facing. While encountering animal remains on the hill was not uncommon, this smell was especially strong and disturbingly different from anything Jorge had experienced before. Curious yet uneasy, Jorge let his kite drop and followed a narrow path that led almost to the summit of Vintem Hill. What he found there was beyond anything he could have imagined. On the ground lay two men, side by side, both adults and dressed neatly. It was evident they had been there for some time. The overwhelming stench that guided Jorge to the location was unmistakably coming from the bodies. Frightened and shaken, the boy ran back home and told his parents about his gruesome discovery. Their concern prompted them to immediately go to the local police station to report the incident. Oscar Nunes, the officer who took the boy's statement, was initially skeptical and asked Jorge to describe his discovery in detail. Certain details stood out to the officer. Jorge reported that the men were dressed elegantly and wrapped in raincoats, lying side by side on the ground. When asked about the men's ages, Jorge said he wasn't sure because both had their faces covered with unusual metal plates and opaque type of goggles without arms. These masks appeared to be handmade and were cut from thin, lead-like metal sheets. As it was already late in the evening and the light was fading, Oscar Nunes decided to wait until the following day to investigate the scene. Early on the morning of August 21st, experts and police officers made their way to the hill, where they were met with an extraordinary sight. When they arrived at the scene, the boy's account was confirmed. Both men lay dead on a bed of leaves that appeared to have been carefully arranged by hand. They were on their backs, their hands casually clasped behind their necks. The scene offered no obvious signs of violence or struggle, which only deepened the mystery. The men were dressed in elegant suits and heavy raincoats. While some speculated that it might have been a joint suicide, others proposed theories involving possible mafia connections. It was suggested that the men might have been involved in a criminal dispute, particularly related to a failed attempt to establish a business, as they reportedly lacked the necessary funding. Among the belongings of the two men, investigators found their identification documents, which allowed for their quick identification as Manoel Pereira da Cruz and Miguel José Viana from Campos dos Goitacazes. In addition to the documents and the peculiar lead plates resembling sunglasses or masks, officers discovered a handkerchief with initials that did not match the names of the deceased. They also found a notebook containing cryptic entries a few paper napkins, an empty bottle of mineral water, and the corresponding receipt. The bartender, who was the last person to see the two men alive, recalled that they appeared nervous and restless, frequently checking their watches. He had sold them a bottle of mineral water shortly before they presumably left for their destination, likely by train. What particularly fascinated the investigators was the notebook found next to the bodies. It contained, over 2 pages, a series of instructions that were clearly connected to the enigmatic staging of their final moments. Yet, despite its apparent significance, the entries did little to clarify the mysterious end of Manoel and Miguel. The first page of the notebook listed various electronic materials and spare parts, which at first seemed unremarkable. On the second page, there was a cryptic note: "Be at the agreed location at 4:30 p.m. Ingest the capsule with the effect at 6:30 p.m. This message left ample room for speculation, adding yet another layer of mystery to an already enigmatic case. Due to the advanced decomposition of the bodies, a reliable toxicological analysis was not possible. Among the items found near the corpses were various belongings and some cash. However, investigators noted that the amount of money the men had on them was significantly less than the sum they had initially taken on their trip. The two men had set out for Rio de Janeiro to purchase spare parts in a car, reportedly carrying a considerable amount of cash. Although they had purchased new raincoats, this could not account for the entire discrepancy. The exact use and whereabouts of the remaining money remained a mystery. That seemed to be all, yet the notebook entries continued to deepen the enigma surrounding this unusual situation. It was unlikely that the case involved murder. Firstly, there were no injuries on the bodies or signs of a struggle at the scene. Additionally, the men still had their watches and some money with them. Considering the apparent order and deliberate placement of items around them, theft was also ruled out by the police. One of the most puzzling aspects was the presence of raincoats and handkerchiefs at the scene. This suggested that the men either anticipated damp conditions or expected to be exposed to water. However, none of the prevailing hypotheses could provide a satisfactory explanation for this detail. The lead masks were clearly some sort of protective device, but what exactly they were meant to protect against remains impossible to determine. The fact that they were made of lead suggests the possible involvement of radiation. Yet, why only protect the eyes? The lead material seemed designed to act as shields, similar to the lead aprons used during X-rays to protect against radiation exposure. The lead material seemed designed to act as shields, similar to the lead aprons used during X-rays to protect against radiation exposure. However, subsequent investigations found no traces of radiation at the site. Additionally, other glasses were discovered among the men's belongings, appearing to be failed prototypes of the final design. A significant amount of lead was also found, indicating that they had conducted thorough experiments before settling on the final version. Shortly after their discovery, the bodies were transported to the local morgue for an autopsy. However, because the forensic pathologist was occupied with other cases at the time, the examination was delayed by several weeks. By the time the autopsies were performed, the internal organs had decayed to such an extent that it was impossible to determine the exact cause of death. Despite the advanced state of decomposition, it was confirmed that there were no foreign substances in their bodies. The alleged pills they had reportedly taken did not appear to be toxic, as revealed by studies on the remains. The official cause of death was listed as heart failure. However, this conclusion did little to unravel the mystery surrounding their demise. It was implausible for two men to climb a hill, lie down simultaneously, and suffer heart attacks in perfect synchronization. Clearly, something critical had eluded the medical examiners, but the true cause remained unclear. Authorities shifted their focus to reconstructing the movements and intentions of the two men, hoping this would shed light on how and why they lost their lives. Investigators interviewed several witnesses in Niterói who claimed to have seen the men in the days leading up to their deaths. From these accounts, the authorities were able to piece together a timeline of events. It is believed that Cruz and Viana traveled by bus from Campos to Niterói on August 17th, carrying enough cash to purchase a used car. This assumption is based on records from their business account, which showed a single large withdrawal. While the exact use of this money remains speculative, it is widely thought that they were interested in purchasing electronic components for their business. They arrived in Niterói at approximately 2:30 p.m., as confirmed by receipts found on their bodies. These indicated that they had purchased raincoats at a local store. Shortly afterward, they continued up the street to a bar, where one of them ordered a bottle of mineral water. The waitress at the bar recalled that both men seemed visibly anxious, especially Miguel, who nervously scanned the room and checked his watch repeatedly. The last sighting of them alive was when they were seated in the back seat of a Jeep, driven by two unidentified men, heading toward an unknown destination. Authorities speculated that the men's intended destination was the base of Vintem Hill. What happened after they arrived remains a complete mystery, a puzzle that has persisted for more than 50 years. Yet, the questions surrounding their deaths are as compelling today as they were then. Why did they travel to Niterói? Who were they supposed to meet? Why were they wearing lead masks? And what was the purpose of the cryptic instructions in their notebook? The lead masks found at the scene defy explanation, at least based on known purposes. The purpose or use of the masks found there remains unknown, at least as far as we currently understand. Radiation protection typically involves covering the entire head or body, not merely shielding the eyes. As with many unexplained and mysterious deaths, speculation quickly followed, particularly within the local community. This case was no exception. As with any strange and unexplained deaths, a wave of speculation inevitably followed, particularly within the local community. This case was no exception. The discovery of the bodies, once made public, only deepened the intrigue, sparking a flood of theories and rumors. A local woman named Griselda Barbosa came forward to the police with information that shed new light on the events. She recounted that on the night of August 17th, while driving with 3 of her children, she saw a glowing object in the sky above the hill. Her account was particularly striking because it wasn't just a brief sighting. Griselda stopped the car, got out, and carefully observed the object. She described it as orange with a fiery outline, slowly moving up and down near the top of the hill. The object emitted beams of light in all directions, as if it were searching for something. She watched it for approximately half an hour before deciding to return to her vehicle. There, she told her husband about the experience. Driven by curiosity, he wanted to see it as well, so they drove back to the base of the hill. By then, however, the object had vanished. Manoel's father later claimed this account was true, but few took it seriously. Yet, 2 additional details added to the mystery. In addition to the sighting of the object hovering over the area where the men were later found, it was observed that the ground where the bodies had lain remained barren for a long time. Just a few meters away, vegetation grew normally, but at the exact spot where the men had been, nothing grew. Another strange aspect of this case is that these 2 men were not the only ones to have died at this location. Aside from the mystery of the lead masks, other individuals have also been found dead on the hill, showing no signs of injury or the presence of foreign substances in their bodies. They simply went there, laid down on the ground, and inexplicably lost their lives. It remains unknown whether the 2 electricians were mentally unstable or under the influence of a sect or cult. The case also left lingering questions about a possible connection between science, spiritualism, and UFO contact if such a connection exists at all. Brazil is undeniably a land of strange and unexplained phenomena, making it unsurprising that this story has taken on a supernatural angle. According to one theory, Manoel and Miguel were far more than just ordinary electrical technicians. Instead, they were highly skilled experts who allegedly used their technical expertise to create a method for establishing contact with extraterrestrial beings. It is believed that they had arranged a meeting with these entities at Vintem Hill. The theory posits that the men were given detailed instructions to follow, and upon completing them, their physical bodies ceased to function. Their spirits, it is suggested, were transported to an extraordinary, otherworldly realm, a dimension of boundless knowledge and elevated consciousness, where they now exist eternally, freed from the limitations of the physical world. As incredible as it may seem, investigators uncovered additional elements that appear to support a supernatural connection. At least 2 reputable newspapers reported that a local resident witnessed a bright orange, spherical UFO hovering over Vintem Hill on the very evening Manoel and Miguel were believed to have gone there. Furthermore, a close friend of the 2 men, Eliezer Gomez, revealed that all 3 were members of a local group called the Spiritual Scientists. He revealed that, 2 months prior to their deaths, the men had constructed a device in their backyard, which they claimed enabled them to make contact with extraterrestrial beings. However, the device reportedly exploded shortly after its creation. This detail shifts attention back to the notebook found with the men. Among its contents was a list of alphanumeric codes, which some theorize were encrypted messages received through their device. These messages, it is believed, were decoded and translated into the instructions the men ultimately followed. When we revisit these instructions, it's easy to see how such an extraordinary theory might have emerged. Be at the designated location at 4:30 p.m. Take the capsule at 6:30 p.m. After the effect, protect metals, wait for the signal, put on the mask. The instructions were remarkably specific, yet the last part of the sentence seems ambiguous. By introducing some speculative punctuation, however, the meaning becomes somewhat clearer. Be at the designated location at 4:30 p.m. Take the capsule at 6:30 p.m. After the effect, protect metals, wait for the signal, put on the mask. The nature of the capsules or how Manoel and Miguel used them remains a mystery. None were found near their bodies, but it seems clear that they must have taken them as instructed. Without identifying these capsules, it is nearly impossible to determine what effects they were meant to produce. The phrase protect metals remains somewhat cryptic, particularly since no valuables were found on the men. Some have speculated that they were instructed to remove earrings, rings, or other jewelry, which may have been wrapped in the towels discovered near their bodies. The signal they were meant to wait for also remains an enigma. The term mask clearly refers to the small, cut-out mesh pieces covering their eyes. These masks had no practical functionality, they weren't transparent, lacked a frame, and were clearly not intended for extended use. Instead, their simplistic design suggests they were meant to provide brief protection for the eyes against an intense, blinding light source. Many supporters of this theory argue that such a light source could only have been a UFO. But should we accept this theory based solely on anecdotal and circumstantial evidence? Many remain skeptical, believing that the deaths of Manoel and Miguel might have more rational and entirely earthly explanations. One theory suggests they were lured to the hill, where they were murdered and robbed of their belongings. Another posits that they were targeted by a group of criminals who viewed them as naive and easy prey. This group might have spent weeks or even months gaining the trust of Manoel and Miguel, perhaps by promising to help them communicate with extraterrestrial beings or achieve some form of spiritual enlightenment. The men were likely given the capsules along with a set of instructions that were peculiar enough to convince them they were about to experience something extraordinary. These capsules were most likely a form of poison. After the men ingested them and died almost immediately, someone from the group may have returned to retrieve their money and valuables. It's notable that all the cash the men reportedly had with them, along with their other belongings, was never found. When we consider the fact that another man, also an electrical technician, was found dead 4 years earlier on a different hill, wearing a similar lead mask, the theory suddenly gains even greater significance. Once again, much of this is pure speculation. While the evidence supporting the robbery theory may seem compelling, it raises an important question. How could 2 intelligent and technically skilled individuals fall for such an obvious scheme? And then there are the codes found in their notebook. Do these codes prove that they received instructions via encrypted transmissions rather than direct communication? Apparently not. The codes were eventually identified as part numbers for various electronic components and had no apparent connection to any other aspect of the investigation. How do we explain the UFO reportedly seen over the hill on the night of the men's deaths? Notably, this sighting wasn't limited to just a few individuals. Through our research into many strange events, one consistent pattern emerges: UFO sightings are often accompanied by other unexplainable occurrences. This isn't to question the credibility of those who reported the sighting, but it's essential to approach such claims with an honest understanding of their uncertain nature. When all the facts are taken into account, this case appears suspicious from the very beginning. However, we should remain open to other theories, as they may provide valuable alternative explanations. It's often assumed that extraterrestrials would have no interest in money or valuables, but who can say that with certainty? If we consider other eyewitness reports, such as claims of aliens disguised as humans, it's plausible they might require such items to assimilate into human society. In any case, there's an unsettling implication that either the truth was deliberately concealed or that the men's deaths were the direct result of criminal activity. Both possibilities are equally disturbing. Tragically, Manoel and Miguel's membership in a group calling themselves spiritual scientists reflects their deep desire to believe in the supernatural. Conviction can be powerful enough to override logic and rational thought, making it difficult for individuals to see through deception. It's possible that Manoel and Miguel were so captivated by the idea of a higher intelligence and the pursuit of ultimate knowledge that they abandoned skepticism and critical thinking qualities that might have otherwise protected them from falling victim to a trap. What really happened on Vintem Hill in August 1966? The mysterious deaths of Manoel Pereira da Cruz and Miguel José Viana remain an enigma, fueling endless speculation. The lead masks, the cryptic notes, and the instructions in their notebook seem like elements pulled straight from a science fiction story. Whatever compelled these two men to climb that hill ultimately led them to their deaths, leaving behind far more questions than answers. Was it a failed attempt to contact extraterrestrials, an elaborate fraud, or an inexplicable phenomenon? The truth remains hidden, and the mystery of the men with the lead masks serves as a haunting reminder that some secrets may never be unraveled.